The Bonnie Craig case. On September 28, 1994, Bonnie Craig, an 18-year-old student, took her usual 45-minute walk to the nearest school bus stop. She was never late or absent to her first 7 a.m. English class, but that morning she never arrived. Later, her body was found floating in McHugh Creek. It took almost 2 decades for law enforcement to properly investigate and analyze the semen found in a sexual assault examination. Once the DNA from the semen had been placed into the CODIS National DNA Database, Bonnie's killer, Kenneth Dion, had been identified. Bonnie's story is a strong contender to the difficulties family faced during investigation. A 44-year-old woman was arrested for allegedly shooting and killing her husband in front of their children this week while they argued over keys. One of their children told investigators their parents were arguing over keys. During the fight, Elita Bean allegedly attempted to stab her husband in the kitchen. Their argument moved into the bedroom, then back to the kitchen. The affidavit says the fight escalated to defendant Elita Bean being on the ground and the victim without pants on. Elita Bean allegedly asked the child to get her gun, and they reportedly took Terrence Bean's gun and handed it to her, telling her to shoot him. Elita Bean reportedly fired 3 shots. The medical examiner noted Bean was struck in the lower left part of his chest, stabbed twice in the middle of his chest, and cut on his arm. Detectives reportedly located a knife in the garbage can. Elita Bean was booked into the Shelby County Jail on a charge of second-degree murder. A man found guilty of killing neighbor and his dog while they were both walking. Their pet's man has been convicted of killing his neighbor in 2020 following a confrontation involving their dogs. The Florida State Attorney's Office for the 20th Judicial Circuit announced May 21st that a jury found Louis Walker guilty of second-degree murder, including all special findings, improper exhibition of a firearm, and aggravated animal cruelty, including all special findings. The special findings of the murder charge were that the defendant used, possessed, and discharged a firearm causing great bodily harm or death. The special finding on the animal cruelty charge was that the defendant carried, displayed, threatened, or used a firearm during the commission of a crime. Walker is scheduled to be sentenced on June 26th. Walker claimed the victim pulled the gun when their dogs began acting out and it accidentally went off. He also reportedly told the deputy he had gone to his apartment to change after the shooting because he didn't want to be arrested in sweatpants. Official: the Halloween killer in 2005, Andrew Reed Lackey, an Alabamian native, made local fame after breaking into the home of Charles Newman, an 80-year-old World War II veteran, to rob him. Newman shot at him in self-defense, to which Lackey stabbed and shot him to death. Lackey was detained and convicted of capital murder during a burglary, capital murder during a robbery, burglary and robbery, and sentenced to death. In 2013, he had been the first person executed in Alabama after 2 years. His execution revisited the debate over lethal injection and slowed subsequent executions in AL. The Plainfield Ghoul serial killer. Ed Guillen, a farmer who turned handyman from Plainfield, Wisconsin, committed some crimes in the 50s that will shake any person to their core. Ed's parents passed away in the 40s, and after that he took a dark turn. He began to separate himself from people and started to live a lonely life. In this process, he developed a strange obsession for killing, sexual fantasies, cutting bodies into pieces, and cannibalism. First, he started to dig up graves from the cemeteries to satisfy himself with these obsessions. But later in 1954, he started killing older women and kept doing it for a long time. When the authorities finally got on to him, they went to investigate at his farm. What they saw was nothing less of a horror show. The farm was filled with body parts of human beings, and there were dead bodies around. He was taken into custody and was charged with the murder of 15 women. The court deemed him ill and sentenced him to life imprisonment in a mental facility. He was held there until 1984, where he eventually died of cancer. A 38-year-old plumber faces 33 felony charges and over 100 special allegations after allegedly killing another plumber, fatally poisoning an elderly client for financial gain, and robbing a convenience store. The Ventura County District Attorney's Office first charged Rothery Foster in January 2023 for the alleged murder of Jose Velasquez. According to prosecutors, Velasquez was reported missing in July 2022, and hikers found his remains in the Santa Monica Mountains several months later. The Los Angeles County Coroner's Office determined he died of multiple gunshot wounds. In a press conference held May 22nd, Ventura County District Attorney Eric Nasarenko said Velasquez and Foster both worked as plumbers and they knew each other. Further investigation revealed Foster allegedly violently and forcibly stole Velasquez's ATM passwords and checks for gas, cash, clothing, and food. According to Nasarenko, authorities obtained cell phone records and forensic evidence from Foster's van, leading to his initial arrest on charges of first-degree murder. A 39-year-old high school coach will spend almost 4 decades in prison after recording girls changing in a locker room for nearly 10 years. The Rock County District Attorney's Office announced May 23rd that Brian Kitzman was found guilty of 6 counts of capturing an intimate representation without consent, victim under age 18, 12 counts of possessing an intimate representation without consent, victim under age 18, and 1 count of invasion of privacy, surveillance device, victim under 18. A judge subsequently sentenced Kitzman to 38 years in the Wisconsin state prison system, as well as 1 year of initial confinement followed by 1 year of extended supervision for each of the 19 victims. He will also have to register as a sex offender for 15 years after his prison sentence. Officers arrested Kitzman while he was reportedly entering a bus for a track meet. He was initially charged with possession of child pornography, violation of privacy, and representations depicting nudity. The story of Michael Jackson crime case, though the King of Pop was never convicted of crimes against children, the shocking trial of Jackson in 2005 was a very public proceeding that followed just about a decade after the singer first being accused of child molestation. The 2005 case was precipitated by a shocking documentary which led to a stunning raid of Jackson's Neverland compound. Jackson was acquitted in that trial, but before his death he did agree to multiple settlements with the families of kids who accused him of abuse. The BTK Strangler serial killer case. The story of BTK Strangler is a strange case and a criminal who stayed hidden for almost 30 years. This case was not solved until 2005, which is a long time when you consider that the first murder the BTK killer committed was in 1974. Dennis Lynn Ryder from Kansas terrorized Wichita for more than 2 decades with his vicious and unorthodox killing. He was given the name of BTK because of the way he killed his victims. BTK referred to blind, torture, and kill, and that is how Ryder murdered his victims. He did not just kill his victims, but he will blind them first, torture them, and then will finally kill them. In 2004, after his last engagement, he was finally caught by the authorities and was charged with 10 murders. Dennis admitted to all these murders, and the court sentenced him for 10 life sentences. After 30 years of terrorizing the city, the BTK Strangler was finally brought to justice by the dedicated authorities, the O.J. Simpson case. Unlike the other mentions, this was not a serial killer case. In fact, it was a case where an NBA celebrity was accused of brutally murdering 2 people, including his wife. O.J. Simpson is the only person on this list who actually walked away as a free man with a not guilty verdict. On June 12, 1994, O.J.'s ex-wife Nicole Brown Simpson and her friend Ron Goldman were killed brutally in Nicole's house. When LAPD got to the scene, they were faced with some evidence that directly pointed towards O.J. Simpson. This included a pair of gloves and his blood samples all over the crime scene. The blood of the victims was also found in O.J.'s house, which was 20 minutes away from the scene of the crime. O.J. pleaded not guilty and was brought to trial, which is still known as the trial of the century. The trial went on for months, and as the case got complex, O.J. started to get closer to his freedom. When one of the best NFL players was accused of murder and his case was on TV, everyone took an interest in it. O.J. hired the best lawyers in town, including the great communicator Johnny Cochran and the Well K. Ted Bundy killer. Ted Bundy is one of the most dangerous criminals on this list. He appeared in court numerous times and was charged for murdering 36 women. Bundy himself confessed to these murders, but the authorities suggested that the actual number was even higher. Ted Bundy had a decent background as he graduated in 1972 from the University of Washington. Ironically, his major was in psychology. A lot of people who went to college with him described him as someone highly skilled at manipulating people, and that is exactly what he used to do. He used to lure them, his female victims, by persuading them, and used to kill them once they had nowhere to go. He was unlike any other murdered, as he was more vicious and killed people in multiple states. In 1979, Ted Bundy was finally convicted for good in Florida and was sent to the electric chair. Bundy and his lawyer made numerous appeals, but he got executed 10 years after the sentencing. Bundy is arguably the most infamous serial killer of the past century. On a Christmas Eve in 1975, a young man who went by the name of David Berkowitz stabbed 2 women to death multiple times. This was the beginning of something horrible and was the first report of the killer, who would be later known as Son of Sam. This killer was famous for shooting people and was also given a nickname of .44 caliber. It is said that he used to walk directly to people's car and used to shoot them in cold blood. He was finally arrested in 1977, and by that time he had already killed at least 6 people and injured 8 more. The puzzling death of Tamla Horsford, whose body was discovered in the backyard of a fellow football mom's home in Cumming, Georgia, in November 2018. 40-year-old Tamla, a mother of 5, was at a sleepover birthday party at a friend's house when she was found in her pajamas, unresponsive in the backyard, the next morning. Of note in the case, which became a key point in the news and social media, was the fact that Horsford was also the only black person at the party. Her death was initially ruled an accident, with the conclusion being that she fell from a second-story balcony. An autopsy report said she had a blood alcohol level of 23, and that traces of Xanax and marijuana were also found. However, Tamla's family did not believe it was an accident. Their attorney, Ralph Fernandez, stated, "There's a strong possibility Horsford's death was a homicide," citing things like a lack of autopsy photos, the placement of her body, the multitude of injuries, which he considered to be defensive injuries, and inexplicable post-mortem bleeding. In 2020, the case was reopened, the unsolved case of 7-year-old Daphne Tullos, who went missing in July 1988. Tullos had gotten into an argument with her mother over some fish sticks and left home that night. Noted that the same morning Daphne disappeared, the father of her twin brothers was released from jail. However, investigators were not able to connect him to her disappearance. Daphne's family scoured the neighborhoods looking for her, and they said there have been times throughout the years when they thought they found her, but sadly, Daphne was never found. A serial killer and rapist in South Carolina who murdered more than a dozen people, although he claimed to have killed more than 100. Over the course of several decades from the 1950s, 1980s. He would either stab, shoot, drown, or poison his victims. A prolific serial killer, Gaskins was active primarily along the coast of South Carolina. He was also the only person who killed another inmate while both were on death row. Gaskins was executed on September 6, 1991. The Bigham family murders, which is about a powerful family active in Florence County, South Carolina during the late 19th and early 20th centuries. It is believed that over 3 generations, the family was responsible for nearly 20 murders, including their own family members. According to Southern Living, throughout 6 generations of the family living in South Carolina, a number of the members were accused of circumventing the law, murdering family members and workers, and general unpleasantness, culminating in the events of Jan. 15, 1921, where 5 members of the family were killed. The surviving member of the family, Edmund Bigham, was put on trial for the murders and was tried 3 separate times, once in Florence County and twice in Conway, all while maintaining that it was his brother Smiley who had killed his family, then taken his own life.